The arrival. The road to Greystone Hollow was not one that people took by accident. It wound its way through a narrow mountain pass, hemmed in by jagged cliffs and dense forests that swallowed the light even in mid-afternoon. Travelers who braved the path found themselves in silence, an oppressive, unnatural quiet that seemed to grow heavier the closer one came to the village. Even the birds refused to follow. Adrian Locke noticed the silence first. A 34-year-old journalist and self-styled explorer of forgotten places, Adrian had made a name for himself online by chasing legends and tearing them apart with logic and evidence. Abandoned castles, haunted mines, derelict houses where people swore they saw shadows, he had visited them all. His motto was simple: there's always an explanation. Fear is just a story waiting to be disproven. That was exactly why Greystone Hollow fascinated him. He'd heard whispers of the cursed bell tower from obscure folklore blogs, half-forgotten journals, and an elderly professor who had warned him, some legends aren't meant to be chased. Some bells should never be heard. Which, of course, only made Adrian more determined. By the time he arrived, the sun was low, casting the valley in a bronze glow. Greystone Hollow lay nestled at the bottom, a cluster of stone houses with peaked roofs, smoke rising from their chimneys in thin trails. Beyond them, rising above all, was the church, or what remained of it. The tower stood tall and crooked, its roof collapsed in places, the massive brass bell visible through the shattered wooden shutters. Even at this distance, Adrian felt its presence. The villagers noticed him immediately. Strangers were rare here. As Adrian walked through the cobblestone streets with his rucksack slung over his shoulder, eyes followed him from behind shuttered windows. A few elderly women paused in their work, muttering prayers under their breath. Children were pulled inside. Adrian smiled politely, unfazed. He had seen this before. Isolated communities always carried suspicion of outsiders. Still, the unease was thicker here, like a fog you could taste. At the center of the village stood a crooked inn with a weathered sign, the Black Stag. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and stew. A heavy silence fell when Adrian entered, boots echoing against the floorboards. The innkeeper, a broad man with graying hair and weary eyes, glanced up. "You're not from here," he said flatly. Adrian set his rucksack on the counter. "No, just passing through. Thought I'd stay the night." "Name's Adrian." The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "One night, no more." Adrian raised a brow. "That's all I need." He paid, received a key, and was shown to a small room upstairs. But he didn't stay long. His curiosity was pulling him outside. The streets grew darker as the last rays of sun vanished behind the peaks. Lanterns flickered to life, glowing faintly in windows. Yet the churchyard, where the tower loomed, remained unlit. No one dared approach it. Adrian walked closer, boots crunching on gravel. A wooden fence surrounded the ruins, but sections had long rotted away. The church's stone walls were cracked, vines crawling over them, and its doors chained shut with rusted iron. The tower rose above, and in the failing light, Adrian could see the bell dark, massive, its surface glinting faintly. Even without moving, it commanded attention. "Don't linger there." Adrian turned. An old woman stood a few yards away, hunched beneath a shawl, her eyes sharp despite her age. She held a basket of herbs, though she wasn't picking, only watching. "Evening," Adrian said politely. "I was just curious. Quite the landmark you've got here." She shook her head. "Not a landmark, a curse." Adrian smiled faintly. "So I've heard. That's why I came." Her expression hardened. "Then you're a fool." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Do you know what happens when the bell tolls?" "I've heard the stories," Adrian said. 13 chimes at midnight, people vanish, that sort of thing. Local folklore." Her hand tightened around the basket. "Folklore keeps us alive. No one leaves their house after dark. No one listens. The bell chooses. If you mock it, it will choose you." Adrian scribbled mental notes, though outwardly he chuckled. "With all respect, ma'am, bells don't ring themselves." And they certainly don't choose people. The old woman's face was pale in the moonlight. Then stay in your room tonight, outsider. For your own sake. She turned and hobbled away before he could ask more. Back in the inn, Adrian set up his gear. His recorder, camera, notebook all ready. He had no intention of staying inside. At dinner, he sat at a wooden table near the hearth, while the innkeeper served stew. Other patrons avoided his gaze, whispering among themselves. When Adrian asked about the bell, silence spread like wildfire. Finally, the innkeeper leaned in. "Don't go there," he said in a low voice. "We don't talk about it. We don't look at it. And we sure as hell don't test it." Adrian gave his best disarming smile. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Just research. People love these stories online." The innkeeper's jaw tightened. "Stories. That bell rang last winter. A boy went missing. His mother still screams at night." The words hit the room like a stone in still water. Adrian paused, unsure whether to push further. Instead, he said lightly, "I'll be careful." The innkeeper's eyes darkened. "Care won't save you." That night, Adrian lay in bed, listening. The village was unnaturally quiet. No dogs barked. No wind howled. Just silence, thick and absolute. He checked his watch. 11:30 p.m. Half an hour until midnight. His heart beat faster. This was why he came. Legends, curses, things people swore were real. He had faced them all, and found truth in shadows. The bell tower would be no different. Adrian grabbed his lantern, recorder, and notebook. Quietly, he slipped from the inn and into the cold night. The streets were empty, every window shuttered, every lantern extinguished. The entire village seemed to hold its breath. The bell tower loomed ahead, a black silhouette against the moon. Adrian crossed the churchyard, crunching over frost-hardened grass, and stopped at the rotted fence. He switched on his recorder. Adrian Lock, Greystone Hollow. Local time, 11:48 p.m. I'm standing at the base of the infamous bell tower. Villagers claim it rings at midnight without human hands. We'll see. His voice sounded too loud in the silence. He climbed over the fence, boots sinking into moss. The chains on the church doors rattled faintly in the wind. He ignored them, heading straight for the base of the tower. Up close, the bell was massive, easily taller than a man, dark brass mottled with age. Strange grooves marred its surface, almost like claw marks. His lantern's glow caught on faint carvings beneath the grime symbols he didn't recognize. Adrian raised the recorder. The bell bears strange markings. Possibly religious, though unlike anything I've seen. He checked his watch. 11:57. The silence deepened, pressing against his ears until it felt suffocating. His breath misted in the air, each exhale louder than it should be. 11:59. He steadied his lantern, forcing a grin. Here we go. The second hand ticked. Midnight. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, gong. The sound rolled through the valley like thunder. Adrian flinched, nearly dropping his lantern. It wasn't the clear chime of metal. It was layered deep, ragged, as though hundreds of voices screamed at once. The ground seemed to tremble beneath his feet. Adrian's mouth went dry. His recorder hissed with static. He glanced up at the bell. The rope hadn't moved. No wind stirred. Gong. The sound ripped through the air again, echoing with cries. Adrian stumbled back, recorder shaking in his hand. His reflection rippled in the bell's surface, faint in the lantern glow. But something was wrong. The reflection was smiling. Adrian wasn't. The bell boomed a third time. The history. The echoes of the bell seemed to hang in Adrian's bones long after the sound faded. 3 tolls, each one reverberating through the valley like thunder, then silence. He stood frozen in the churchyard, recorder buzzing faintly in his grip, the lantern's light trembling with his hand. His reflection on the bell's surface still grinned at him though he had stopped smiling. It was only when he blinked that the grin was gone. Adrian forced a laugh, shaky but determined. Parlor trick. Acoustics. Reflection. There's a rational answer. He checked the recorder. Playback was nearly drowned in static, But beneath the crackle, he could hear something, like whispers laced in the ringing. Dozens of voices murmuring in agony. He swallowed hard, turned off the recorder, and backed away. Enough for tonight. The next morning, the village seemed unchanged, but Adrian noticed the way people watched him more closely. They must have heard the bell. Over breakfast at the inn, he asked casually, "Does the bell ring often?" The room went silent. The innkeeper's hand froze mid-motion. One by one, the other patrons averted their eyes. Finally, the innkeeper muttered, "It rang last night." Adrian nodded. "Yes, I was there." Chairs scraped. A woman gasped. An older man spat on the floor, muttering, "Doomed." The innkeeper leaned in, voice sharp. "You should leave today." Adrian leaned back, unfazed. "Not until I know why the bell rings. There must be records, journals, something. A story like this doesn't survive centuries without writing." The innkeeper's jaw tightened. "Stories survive because we remember. Because we don't forget what it cost us." Adrian lowered his voice. "Then tell me, what did it cost you?" For a long moment, the man said nothing. Then he sighed heavily and nodded toward the far table, where an old villager sat alone with a clay mug. His hands trembled with age, but his eyes were sharp as flint. "Speak to Elias," the innkeeper said. "He remembers what we wish we didn't." Elias regarded Adrian with suspicion but motioned for him to sit. His voice was gravel, worn with time. "You're not the first outsider who's come chasing the bell," he rasped. "But you'll be the last if you're not careful." Adrian leaned forward, notebook ready. "Tell me what you know. How did it start?" Elias's gaze drifted to the window, to where the tower loomed against the pale sky. "It began 300 years ago, when famine came to Greystone Hollow. Crops failed, livestock died. The people begged for mercy, but none came. Starvation hollowed us. That was when Father Aldrich, the village priest, prayed for a miracle." His voice dropped lower, as though the tower itself might hear. "One night, a stranger arrived. A blacksmith dressed in ash-colored robes. He claimed he could forge a bell that would drive away hunger and sorrow, if we gave him the church's silver and iron." Aldrich, desperate, agreed. Elias's eyes gleamed faintly in the firelight. But the blacksmith's forge did not glow with fire. The villagers said it burned cold, a lightless heat that turned metal to shadows. When the bell was raised into the tower, it was darker than any metal they knew. And the first time it rang, people screamed. They said they heard voices in the tolling. The cries of the lost. Adrian scribbled furiously, heart pounding. Elias's voice cracked. Each night it rang 13 times. And each night, someone vanished. A farmer, a child, a mother nursing her babe. By the 13th night, half the village was gone. They sealed the tower and chained the doors, but the bell, it never stopped. Adrian leaned closer. "But it doesn't ring every night anymore." The old man shook his head. "No, only when it chooses. And it always chooses those who doubt. Outsiders, skeptics, fools." His gaze pinned Adrian like a blade. "It has already chosen you." Adrian left Elias with a chill in his stomach he couldn't shake. Rationally, it was absurd, a cursed blacksmith, a bell forged from shadows. Yet the terror in the man's eyes was real. He spent the afternoon in the village archives, a damp stone cellar beneath the chapel ruins. Old records lay in stacks, their ink faded. He combed through them, lantern at his side. At first, he found nothing but birth and death records, harvest logs, sermons. Then, tucked between a ledger, he found it, Father Aldrich's journal. The ink was jagged, the words uneven. "Greater than, the bell has tolled again." I begged him to stop, but the blacksmith only smiled. He said the bell hungers, and hunger must be fed. The villagers demand answers, but what can I say? That I traded their lives for false hope. I hear the voices in every toll. God forgive me. Adrian's pulse quickened. He flipped the page. "Greater than, tonight it will ring 13 again. Tonight, it will take another. I cannot destroy it. I tried, the hammer shattered against its skin. It is not of this world. I fear it will toll forever. The final entry was a blot of ink, smeared as though written in haste. Greater than, if you hear it, do not listen. If you see your reflection, do not believe it. The bell is not metal, it is a mouth. Adrian closed the journal, breath shallow. His rational explanations, acoustics, superstition, felt thinner by the minute. That evening, he returned to the inn. Villagers whispered around him, eyes darting nervously. Some avoided him entirely. At dusk, the old woman from the night before appeared again, blocking his path. Her shawl flapped in the wind. You read Aldrich's words, didn't you? She hissed. Adrian froze. How did you? Because everyone who does wears that look. The look of someone who thinks he can outsmart it. Her eyes gleamed like coals. You can't. I don't believe in curses, Adrian said firmly. Then you'll make a fine offering, she whispered. Night fell fast, swallowing Greystone Hollow in darkness. 11:45. Adrian stood at the edge of the churchyard again, recorder in one hand, lantern in the other. The bell loomed above him, silent, waiting. This time, he pushed inside. The chains on the church door rattled but gave way under his prybar. The smell hit him first, rot, mildew, and something sharper, like burned metal. He stepped into the nave. Pews lay broken, dust thick on the floor. Cobwebs draped the altar. Above, the tower's wooden stairs spiraled into shadow. He climbed, each step groaning under his weight. The air grew colder, heavy, until he could see his breath. His lantern flickered. At the top, the bell hung suspended, vast and terrible. Up close, he saw the truth of Aldrich's words. Its surface was not smooth but rippling, like stretched skin over bone. The symbols carved into it wreathed faintly in the light, as though alive. Adrian raised the recorder. Inside the tower, midnight approaching. Bell surface appears unnatural. Possibly corrosion, though movement is visible. Documenting. Gong. The sound nearly knocked him off his feet. He clutched the railing, teeth rattling. The bell had tolled midnight, but the rope was still. Gong. He staggered. The sound was closer this time, pressing against his skull. Whispers bled into his ears, words he almost understood. Hungry, always hungry. Adrian's skin went cold. He looked at the bell, and froze. His reflection stared back at him, but it wasn't standing still. It was climbing out. Gong. The tolling. Gong. The fourth toll shook the rafters, dust cascading from above. Adrian pressed himself against the cold stone wall, recorder trembling in his hand. His reflection on the bell's surface wasn't his anymore. Its eyes glowed faintly, lips moving in sync with the whispers that filled the tower. Come closer, it mouthed. Adrian gritted his teeth, forcing rationality to take hold. Hallucination, sleep deprivation, psychological projection. But his voice broke under the strain. The fifth toll slammed into him like a wave. His lantern flickered violently, casting long shadows that slithered across the walls. For an instant, he thought he saw faces stretching from the stone itself, mouths open in eternal screams. He staggered forward, gripping the railing, climbing higher toward the bell. The sixth toll. This time, the floorboards groaned as though the tower itself was alive. Something shifted above him. He dared to look up, and nearly dropped his recorder. From the shadows clinging to the bell, a shape was peeling free. Long, spindly arms clawed at the air, pulling a body down from within the metal. It wasn't reflection, it wasn't shadow, it was emerging. No, that's impossible, Adrian gasped. The seventh toll. The thing's head bent unnaturally as it slid free from the bell. Its skin shimmered like molten iron, half-formed and twitching. Its face was his face, but distorted, stretched wide in a grin too large to be human. Adrian stumbled back, heart hammering, nearly tumbling down the stairwell. The eighth toll. The whispers rose, louder now, almost deafening. He clamped his hands over his ears, but they weren't outside, they were inside his skull. Voices of children, mothers, men, all pleading. Take my place. Free us. Join us. He tried to scream back, I won't. The ninth toll. The creature fully detached now, standing upright on the beam beside the bell. Its grin was wider than ever, its eyes empty voids. It cocked its head, mimicking his every movement. Then it spoke, not with sound, but directly in his mind. You already rang it. Adrian's stomach dropped. What? You set it free. Now it feeds. The 10th toll. The tower shook violently. Cracks splintered through the stone. Adrian dropped to his knees, clutching the recorder, as the creature descended slowly toward him, fingers stretching like blades. The 11th toll. The lantern shattered, plunging the tower into near darkness. Only the pale glow of the bell lit the space now, its surface rippling with dozens of faces pressing outward, screaming silently. Adrian scrambled down the stairs, boots slipping on the rotten wood. The whispers chased him, louder, sharper. The 12th toll. He reached the base of the tower, shoving open the church doors, stumbling into the cold night air. The village was utterly silent. Every window shuttered, every door locked. He turned back. The bell was glowing like a furnace, the silhouette of the creature framed against it. The 13th toll. The sound was unbearable, not just heard but felt. His chest seized as if invisible hands gripped his lungs. The recorder fell from his grasp, hitting the cobblestones. The creature stepped into the night, its grin reflecting the lantern's last ember. The whispers stopped. Silence. Adrian's scream tore through the darkness, then cut off abruptly. Dawn came soft and gray. The villagers gathered hesitantly at the churchyard. None dared enter the tower, but all had heard the bell toll 13 times the night before. On the ground outside the door, they found only Adrian's recorder. Elias picked it up with shaking hands, pressed play. At first, nothing but static. Then the tolls, each louder than the last. Beneath them, the screams, Adrian's voice, begging, pleading. And layered deeper still, a chorus of others, the vanished, the lost. But the recording didn't stop after 13 tolls. It kept going. A 14th toll echoed through the device. Then a 15th. Elias dropped it, face pale. It's growing hungrier. The villagers backed away, murmuring prayers, crossing themselves. The tower loomed, silent now, as though nothing had happened. That night, Greystone Hollow didn't sleep. Parents clutched their children close, candles burned in windows. But no bell tolled, no sound came, until midnight the following day. When it rang, not from the tower, but from Adrian's recorder. The curse lives on. The recorder would not stop. It lay on Elias's table, wrapped in cloth, yet still the faint sound of tolling leaked from within. 13 strikes had been captured, Adrian's terrified sobs woven through each one, but then, impossibly, the recording went on. 14, 15, 16. Every new toll sent ripples through the air, rattling glass panes, making the dogs howl. Elias begged the other villagers to destroy it, but when one man tried to smash it with a hammer, the hammer shattered instead. The device remained untouched, its little red light blinking faintly like a heartbeat. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some said the recorder had become the new vessel of the curse. Others swore they saw Adrian's shadow walking the alleys at night, head cocked, smiling that grotesque smile. Whatever truth lingered, one fact was certain, the bell's hunger was no longer confined to the tower. The outsider. Weeks later, a university researcher named Dr. Helena Voss arrived in Greystone Hollow. A folklorist by trade, she had studied curses, oral traditions, and rituals across Europe. When she heard rumors of the phantom bell, she dismissed them as exaggeration. Carrying notebooks, a digital recorder, and her camera, she walked confidently into the village. The locals stared but said little. Elias approached her quietly, warning in a trembling voice. "Leave, tonight. Do not stay until midnight." Helena smiled kindly but brushed him off. "I've documented 37 ghost bells across the continent, Mr. Elias. They're metaphors, not monsters. Don't worry, I'll respect your traditions." But her words rang hollow. Already, she was planning her midnight experiment. That evening, Helena set up camp in the ruins of the churchyard, not far from the tower. The villagers barred the doors as usual, whispering prayers for her soul. At 11:50, she tested her camera, adjusted her tripod, and spoke into her digital recorder. Experiment 1. Greystone Bell Tower. Local accounts suggest the bell rings of its own accord at midnight, followed by auditory hallucinations. Objective: capture clear, empirical evidence. She laughed softly. If nothing happens, I'll still have a great story for the archives. But something did happen. Midnight, 11:59. The air thickened. Helena's breath plumed visibly in the cold, though it was midsummer. Her recorder crackled, static filling the air. She adjusted her camera nervously. Temperature drop noted. Equipment interference likely caused by atmospheric. Gong. The first toll silenced her. The camera shook, though no wind blew. Helena turned, wide-eyed, staring up at the tower. The rope was still, the bell unmoving, yet the sound reverberated through her bones. Gong. Her hands trembled as she clutched the recorder. It's not physical resonance, she whispered, though her voice faltered. The bell isn't moving. Her camera lens distorted. For a moment, the frame showed dozens of pale faces pressed against the stone of the tower, mouths open in silent screams. But when she blinked, they were gone. Gong. She staggered back, nearly tripping over her tripod. The recorder grew hot in her hand. Subjective hallucination, must be. Gong. The fourth toll shook the earth itself. Dust fell from the tower. Helena's hair whipped about as though a storm had risen, though the air was still. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. Someone stood just beyond the glow of her lantern. Adrian, she whispered before she realized what she had said. The figure stepped forward. His face was pale, eyes hollow, lips stretched wide in that inhuman smile. His clothes were torn, coated with ash. Join us, he whispered, though his mouth never moved. Gong. Helena screamed, fumbling for her camera, but the lens cracked, splitting down the middle. The figure stepped closer. Behind him, more shadows peeled away from the tower, shapes of men, women, and children, all with that same stretched smile. She dropped the recorder. It didn't stop recording. The final toll. The villagers heard it all. At midnight, the tolls rang louder than ever, shaking windows and rattling dishes. They huddled in terror, listening as the bell struck 13 times. Then 14, 15, and through the tolls came Helena's screams, carried unnaturally across the valley, echoing long after her voice was gone. At dawn, Elias and a few braver souls ventured to the churchyard. Her camp was overturned, her equipment scattered. The camera was cracked, the tripod splintered. Of Helena, there was no trace. Only her recorder remained, still glowing faintly. When Elias pressed play, he heard the tolls, Helena's frantic notes, then silence. And then, her voice again. Calm, measured. This is Helena Voss, signing off from Greystone Hollow. The experiment continues. But it wasn't her voice. Not exactly. It was slower, deeper, layered with many others beneath it. The villagers fled, leaving the recorder behind. The endless cycle. Years passed. Greystone Hollow grew emptier, its younger generations fleeing to cities, unwilling to live under the shadow of the cursed bell. The tower still stood, though weather-beaten, and the bell still rang. Not every night, only when someone new arrived, curious, mocking, dismissive of the warnings. Tourists, thrill-seekers, scholars, all vanished, and always, the recorder remained, carrying the curse to whoever dared touch it. Some say the bell no longer needs the tower, that it has moved into the machines, the recordings, the echoes people play back on the devices. There are whispers online of strange audio files, clips of 13 tolls followed by screams, that corrupt computers and leave listeners dreaming of hollow-eyed figures standing at the foot of their beds. They say if you listen all the way through, the bell will toll again in your sleep. And when it reaches the 13th strike, you won't wake up. Epilogue. Deep in the mountains, the tower looms, its bell rusted yet eternal. The villagers avoid it still, crossing themselves whenever the wind carries faint echoes down the valley. No one dares count the tolls anymore, because the moment you do, you've already been chosen. And when the bell calls your name, there is no escape. Bell. The end.